She was beautiful, powerful, and born into one of the most feared families in Eastern Europe. But behind the castle walls, Countess Elisabeth Bathory became something far more terrifying. Over 600 girls entered her home. Most were never seen again. Some were found in pieces, others were buried beneath the floors. Her crimes were whispered by peasants, denied by nobles, and ignored by kings, until one night, her blood-soaked empire finally collapsed. This is not a legend. This is the true story of the woman known as the Blood Countess, who believed human blood could keep her young forever. From the first pale glimmer of dawn until the final ember in the hearth died, Čachtice Castle pulsed like a dark heart above the soft-rolling Slovak hills, controlling every breath taken in the valleys below. Couriers on shaggy horses rattled over the drawbridge with barrels of red wine. Kitchen boys hauled carcasses of boar up the spiral stair to the smoke room, and laundry maids, shoulders hunched under frozen linens, hurried along parapets slick with ice. At the apex of this living machine stood a single window draped in scarlet damask. Whenever its shutters cracked, peasants crossed themselves reflexively, for they believed the Countess could read their thoughts. Candles burned in that room long after midnight, strange silhouettes flitting across the panes, sometimes a raised arm, sometimes the sharp angle of a blade, and the provincial night watch learned to veil their lanterns, lest she glimpse their patrol routes. In village cottages roofed with reeds, children practiced reciting the Lord's Prayer backward, believing the inversion formed a protective charm against soldiers who collected the ladies' gifts. Mothers smeared ashen girls' hair to dull its shine, because beauty, they concluded, was a hunting cry that echoed all the way to the castle's inner chambers. Every fortnight the steward, Imre, rode out with an iron-shod cart and a writ bearing the family seal, 3 black teeth gnashing a crimson field. He professed to hire milkmaids, seamstresses, kitchen scullions. He returned with barrels, never witnesses. Inside the fortress walls, those recruits entered a microcosm suspended between opulence and latent terror. They scrubbed rush-strewn corridors until knuckles cracked from lie, stitched pearls into velvet collars that would never graze their own throats, and learned to navigate the invisible map of moods drawn by their mistress's measured footsteps. Some nights, when harp music drifted from the solar, they could almost forget dread, until a single scream knifed through the melody and was swallowed by stone. Elizabeth herself maintained a regimen so rigid chroniclers later mistook it for piety. She rose before sunrise, committed 3 psalms to memory, dictated letters in 4 languages, and oversaw herbal distillations reputed to heal gout, plague, and infertility. Yet the same precise hands that annotated medical texts delighted in calibrating suffering, how long a body could endure exposure to snowdrifts, how much bee-sting venom a girl might carry before delirium set in. Observers likened her gaze to polished hematite, beautiful, cold, and capable of reflecting another's fear without absorbing it. By dusk, torchlight threw tremulous shadows across the colonnades, painting grotesque tableaux of imaginary executions. The courtyard dogs refused meat if it smelled of lavender, an aroma they had learned to associate with death. Ravens nesting in the bell tower hesitated to croak after the chapel's vesper toll, as though the stone itself could retaliate. No chronicler captured these subtleties, yet every villager sensed them in marrow. An atmosphere saturated with expectation, as if the air waited for the Countess to exhale her next command, a command that might summon bread or blood with equal ease. Elisabeth Bathory was born in 1560 amid the sulphurous roar of Turkish cannon pounding at Royal Hungary's borders, a child christened between 2 wars and a faith. Her cradle stood in a manor whose foundations bled into subterranean passages older than the nation itself, and her wet nurse whispered Protestant prayers while the family chaplain muttered Latin litanies. This duality, gospel and gunfire, silk and steel, imprinted itself before she learned to speak. At 4 she survived a seizure her tutors deemed possession. At 6 she read the Summa Theologica aloud. At 8 she corrected a Latin scribe's syntax. Court life in Vienna revealed a prodigious memory allied with frightening candor. She matched archdukes on Senecan aphorisms, then pivoted into dissecting battlefield amputations witnessed on her estates. Suitors admired her alabaster complexion and enormous dowry, but confessed unease when she answered a query about plague with, "I wish only to study its progress." Marriage to Ferenc Nadasti, the black hero of Hungary, fused sword and fortune. On their wedding night, he gifted her an iron-clawed glove for disciplining servants. She later improved the design by angling barbs inward to maximize tearing on withdrawal. While Ferenc waged lightning raids against the Ottomans, Elizabeth ruled 19 villages, introducing progressive crop rotation and draconian punishment in equal measure. Ledgers swelled, grain reserves doubled, and the castle apothecary evolved into an alchemical laboratory stocked with imported antimony, cinnabar, and aqua regia. Scholars traveled to debate Paracelsian doctrine, unaware that pages with blood-spattered hymns ferried copper basins through adjacent rooms. She kept notebooks in a cipher derived from Greek shorthand, cataloging the effects of strangulation versus exsanguination or comparing shrieks at varied temperatures. By her 30th year, rumors fermented across the countryside. Midwives spoke of girls with crescents carved behind their knees. Priests noted confessions involving scented oil, needles, and ropes. Yet none dared accuse a countess whose relatives included a cardinal, a judge, and the Palatine of Hungary. Even families of victims hesitated. Service at Lactis was the only path to steady bread in war-torn lands. Thus Elizabeth's supremacy ripened in an ecosystem of silence. Bishops owed her loans, generals coveted her logistics, and aristocratic cousins feared scandal would invite Ottoman opportunism. She interpreted the hush as permission, expanding her private studies with a severity matched only by the winter gales rattling her towers. When the first flurries of winter 1600 dusted Vactus's turrets, Countess Bathory began what survivors later called her Red Season, a stretch of escalating brutality that eclipsed even frontier savagery. Her gait grew springier, her complexion oddly radiant, her toilette austere, no rouge, no musk, only beeswax brushed across cheekbones to snare candlelight like newborn frost. Servants detected omens, a dog collar on the dining table, a bronze funnel beside the embroidery hoop, silk rope coiled like a viper on the lectern. Elizabeth's accomplices performed with journeyman precision. Dorothea Countess wielded an iron firehook capable of cracking a femur in one swing. Ilona Jo excelled at suturing lips so screams stayed inside walls. Young Fichko fetched brine, nails, or the lapdog used to demonstrate obedience. Each afternoon they guided new girls through a false pantry door into a chamber whose floor sloped toward a grayer trough. The Countess recorded findings with scholarly detachment, timing terror's threshold, gauging blood viscosity, noting bruise rates on flax-starved skin. She began with ritual kindness warm broth, velvet cloak stew heightened the eventual fall. Lantern shutters snapped open, revealing hooks and a cage sized for a girl. Wax dripped onto welts while icy water sluiced ankles. Needles punctured gums to preserve vocal cords for later study. When pulses waned, juniper oil massages rekindled circulation, prolonging experiments. Outside, villagers tracked events through absences. Less broth delivered meant another body cooling in the crypt. Larger arsenic orders signaled new techniques. Victims ranged from chambermaids to minor nobility whose families owed debts. Ferenc's death in January 1604 freed her restless intellect. She converted the Great Hall into a physiological theater, candle racks depicting nerve bundles, choir gallery shelves bearing salts and astrological vials. Midnight salons offered scholars first-hand views of corporeal mysteries amid muffled screams. A pivotal moment arrived when a drop of blood landed on her glove and seemed to soften skin. Whether illusion or coincidence, she absorbed it as truth. Human blood preserved youth. Basins were positioned to collect arterial spray. Victims were inverted so gravity became an instrument. She bathed cautiously wrists, neck, then immersed arms and torso. The sensation, she wrote, was like stepping through a mirror into an earlier self, and the red season lengthened from winter into a perennial shadow blanketing every corridor of Lactis. Rumor alone seldom topples a fortress buttressed by family crests and imperial favor. Arithmetic did. By 1610, servant registers in 8 counties showed a void of girls aged 14 to 20, and funeral processions clogged roads once reserved for grain wagons. These discrepancies reached György Thurzo, Palatine of Hungary and Elizabeth's cousin by marriage, who sensed an opportunity to curry favor with the Habsburg court. Discreet inquiries posed as tax audits. Clerks counted hearths and quietly noted missing daughters. Survivors surfaced, lured by vengeance and promised debt relief. Katerina Benica limped into a Jesuit hospice with burn-mottled arms, her testimony cataloging lash counts, joint dislocations, and rosewater preambles to scalding. 3 corroborating witnesses built a statistical pattern impossible to dismiss. On December 29, 1610, Thurzo led an armed retinue through drifting snow toward Lactis, torches smearing flame across hoarfrost. Inside, soldiers traced a metallic tang to a corridor where a girl lay dead, skin stippled with punctures like sewing pins. Another victim, eyelids seared off, still breathed. Elizabeth, found writing in cipher, looked up as if roused from research, not crime. Accounts differ on her words. Some claim she sighed, "All cats are gray in the dark," others that she invoked noble immunity, but she did not resist. Evidence was sealed, accomplices were manacled. In January 1611, Čachtice Castle hosted proceedings nominally against her servants, yet every witness aimed at their absent mistress. Over 200 depositions formed a macabre census. Corpse counts ranged from 30 to 650. Ilona and Dorothea lost fingers before beheading. Fichko was decapitated swiftly. Elizabeth faced a political compromise. Execution risked noble precedent, exoneration risked revolt. Thurzo proposed perpetual house arrest. Windows were brick save a slit for food. Months stretched into years, marked only by a wooden platter sliding through the aperture. Priests sent for confession reported silence so profound they doubted she breathed, yet guards swore midnight scratching echoed behind the wall. On August 21, 1614, her heart finally surrendered, but legend had long replaced pulse. Even after mortar cured around her sealed chamber, Bathory's story refused interment, mutating across centuries like a clever virus. Jesuit pamphleteers painted her as Protestant demon. Transylvanian bards sang of a storm-riding Valkyrie. 19th-century Gothic novelists grafted her onto vampire lore, wedding her to a fictitious cousin named Vlad Dracula. Each retelling sharpened the silhouette until the historical woman blurred beneath masks. Yet archives persist, judicial transcripts, tax rolls, angular letters. No extant parchment proves routine bloodbaths, only depositions under duress, yet shallow graves ring Lactis. Femurs splintered by iron rods, and a ledger notes girls forefinished. Historians debate motives. Epilepsy misread as possession, trauma from Ottoman mutilations, porphyria, political conspiracy, malignant narcissism. Thurzo's letters calculate inheritance splits, yet victim autopsies confirm creative torment. Truth swings like a lantern, illuminating neither pole for long. Popular culture feasts, films bathe marble in stage blood, metal bands roar her name, cosmetics flirt with plasma serums. Tourists find a sun-bleached hill where time softens ruins. A plaque lauds her charity, but Ivy prefers older horror. In 2010, archivist Julia Horvath found a marginal note: blood fortifies tissues when faith guides the blade. 13 Bathory words fusing physiology and mysticism. Was it medical theory or murderous creed? History cannot subpoena the dead. Instead we confront the mirror she polished with gore, reflection of power unrestrained by consequence, of curiosity curdled into predation, of silence lubricating atrocity. Scholars digitize testimonies. Algorithms return the shape poets already knew. Fear. Law students cite her in debates on noble immunity. Ethicists invoke her in research ethics seminars. She endures because she embodies the paradox of progress kneeling atop brutality. In the hush before sleep, imagine Lactis silent, moonlight etching arrow slits on stone. Behind a walled-up door rests a desk, quills dust, notebooks whose cipher defies scholars. Perhaps the last page holds an apology we will never decode. Perhaps it is blank, proof that words themselves abandoned her. Either way, the pulse of forgotten girls still beats in collective marrow, a muted drum urging vigilance. Their stories whisper through every creak of castle ruins at dusk.